Geek. Cleveland and the Geek. Talking baseball every week. Because the Cleveland and the Geek.
And welcome to Gleeman and the Geek, presented by Black Stack Brewing. Great beer, very nearby you, right in your local liquor store. I'm John Bonus, the Twins Daily. With me, Aaron Gleeman of The Athletic. Not really with me. Long ways away now.
Black Stack is near me because I am back in Minneapolis.
Yes, you're right. You are correct.
After a couple weeks in Twins camp with John.
Yes.
That's really why I went, to just hang out with you, John.
Where I still am, which you can see by my fantastic background if you're watching on the YouTube video. This is Radio Room 3 in Hammond Stadium.
Exciting.
Yes.
It's one of the better radio rooms there, I got to tell you.
Lots of gray.
Yeah. We need to bring like our own background places.
You are correct.
Yeah. But what would it be really? I don't know. We could just take a picture of your actual background at home, like your apartment, like your condo.
There you go.
Like overlooking the city, and just bring it. You just bring it everywhere you are. You're like in Spain. It's just the downtown Minneapolis skyline.
I understand, the Zoom that we're using to record this has such effects like that. Like if I would have thought to take a picture, we could have done something like that. Or I could just put a picture of like Hammond Stadium's green grass at spring training behind there with the palm trees and such. That would be a good look.
I once, like a year or two ago, I did like I don't know if it was a podcast or some interview or something, and I wasn't at home. I think I might have even been in the car, if I remember. And I was like, I don't want this to be the background. So I uploaded the Seinfeld apartment as my background.
Sure.
It's just been this,
Sure.
And the person was like, you have an interesting apartment. And I wanted to be like, yeah, it's a sitcom apartment from 1993, and there's a bicycle
That's
hanging
funny.
in the background. But anyway, yeah, we could do that, see if anybody notices. We're 2-ish weeks into full spring training. Like I said, I was there for a couple weeks. Now I'm back. Yeah. John is still there for the long haul, sort of, long-ish haul. We are now under a month until opening day, which I think is probably the real milestone, because it's like you can at least see I was going to say finish line, but the start line, I suppose. I can tell you that 10 days or 11 days, whatever I ended up doing in 11 days, is about right for me. On day 11,
let's be clear. It's 5 days too long for you.
I mean, it's 11 days too long for me, really. Now that I'm back on the couch, I'm like, why did I ever leave?
Right, yeah.
But this is starting, once the calendar flips to March, games are going every day. There's a monotony that sets in part, and also because every game starts at 1:05 basically.
Right.
And so it is the exact schedule, sometimes 7 days a week, at least 6 days every week.
Yes.
There's no night games. There's really no days off. And I'm assuming it's similar for the players. It's probably even worse for the players because they're having full days. We're just showing up.
The most common asked question at camp is always, what day is it?
Yeah.
You don't know whether it's Monday or Thursday, Sunday. You don't have any idea. Right.
In any situation, and then I'm sure this happens to people who just take vacations that are longer than a week too, is like when Saturday and Sunday have zero to differentiate them from Monday or Wednesday or Thursday.
That's right.
It does blend together in a weird way. And I'm not saying it's good or bad, but I was there like 2 days when I turned to somebody, I'm like, what day is it? Like, I just flew in 37 hours ago or whatever. But opening day, less than a month. It's a early opening, March 26th, I think, Twins in Baltimore.
Yep.
God willing, and the creek don't rise, it'll be Joe Ryan on that mountain in Baltimore. But at this point, and we're going to talk a lot about this on the podcast today, they got to put some of these starting pitchers in bubble wrap at this point. Like they have gone from 3 weeks ago, let's say, and really since the trade deadline, when they picked up Abel and Rojas and who am I missing? Oh, Taj Bradley.
Right.
In 3 separate deals at the trade deadline, and you add those to, Festa and Matthews and Simeon Woods Richardson, and of course the veteran trio that they had too, they were almost immediately, and in fact, I think that AI generated message that they forced Falvey to send out to season ticket holders right after the trade deadline, where it was like, I know you're upset, but we're building great starting pitching depth. Like this was something that they focused on or touted, I would say. And, we talked a million times, this is the strength of the team, starting pitching, not only depth, but quality. All offseason they talked about it. It was weird from our perspective, to have an entire offseason where we weren't talking about starting pitching at all. We weren't
Right.
talking about who could they sign, who could they trade for, any of that stuff.
To the point where when they went after one of the premier starting pitchers on the free agent market, our reaction was, what?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, you're talking about and even Framber Valdez, and even the brief rumors where Peralta they were potentially interested in. Whereas usually we spend a lot of time like, oh, who's a fifth starter they can sign for $1.42 million or something like that. It was weird not to have that. And so then they show up at spring training, and 3 hours into it, basically, Pablo Lopez goes down for the season. And then now we'll talk more about Festa today. Yep. He's been shut down with more shoulder problems, although, and you would know better probably, but they're saying this is unrelated, or at least not directly related to the thoracic outlet syndrome thing that he had last year. But I mean, this is now year 2 of shoulder problems, and it was maybe a tell early on. You know, there's a lot of pitchers who are like, oh, they're a little behind in camp. Liam Hendricks is one, for instance.
Sure.
Where they don't initially appear in games, major league games, but they go to the backfields and they face minor leaguers or they throw live BP. And Festa was doing that. And it sounds like his velocity was down a little bit even in that. And he described having like a little pinching in his shoulder. And so they shut him down, which is obviously smart. The worry, particularly with shoulders, even more so with elbows, as weird as that sounds, is once they start, rest tends not to fix the problem.
Shoulder is as bad as elbow can be, which is a year-long, we've seen it with Pablo, like it's a year-long process to fix it once the elbow really goes. Shoulder is potentially the end of a career. Like you get torn labrums or things like that. Things can get real dicey for you the rest of your.
Now, let's be clear. He doesn't have that.
Right.
He has, I guess a lesser version of that. But when it bleeds in from one year to the next, and the other thing is last year, he was hoping to return for the stretch run last year.
Yes.
And instead I think he didn't end up throwing a pitch after the All-Star break and eventually just got completely shut down, ramping up this spring shutdown again. I think probably at the very least, let's hope a few weeks off, he can start to ramp back up. I mean, obviously he's not going to be in the opening day rotation. I'm assuming he will be on the injured list to start the season. I guess I would be mildly surprised if he pitched for the Twins before like May, probably. Yep. And even that might be a pretty positive scenario, just overall big picture. I also wonder if this signals not the official end, but likely the end of David Festa as a starting pitcher.
Well, I mean, we were wondering that in the offseason when we were talking about, of the 4 starters, which one is most likely to be moving to the bullpen. I think both of us put out there feels like Festa just because of the health concerns and the fact that he seemed to be able to wear down in the season and so on, and whether or not that, thoracic outlet syndrome is by itself a scary diagnosis. Yes. And now on top of it, although this was a weird version of it because they didn't undo any kind of surgery or anything like that, and it was like, oh no, he should be good to go for spring training, and now suddenly we're dealing with a different shoulder something or another. So.
Yeah, and I mean, the sad part is, if you look at that group of 5 or 6, we keep calling them young-ish starters,
post-type prospects.
Yeah, that's what I use. You like that for some reason.
I do like that.
I did not invent that, by the way, but we talked about that in our interview with Derek Shelton. Which, if you are listening only to the free shows, like this one right now, my fine folks, you missed out on an hour-long chat that we had with the Twins' new manager, Derek Shelton, over beers in his office, which was a fun little dynamic.
Yes. Kind
of took us back to the old times when we used to record this in bars and breweries and stuff like that. I was really happy with the interview, not only from he seemed to immediately kind of get the vibe we go for on this show, which is half interview, half just dudes sitting around a table, in this case, drinking Miller Lights.
Sure.
So, we were cracking jokes. I was asking him some absurd stuff. You were asking him some actual questions about strategy and his coach background and all that. I thought it was a really good mix. So if you are a listener of this show, which we call the Friday Free Show, we're doing at least 2 episodes additionally per week for Patreon, exclusively for Patreon subscribers at patreon.com/Gleeman, Patreon, patreon.com/Gleeman. 2 things about that. One, if you sign up now, you can go listen to that hour-long Derek Shelton chat, which I think is one of the best interviews we've done. Yeah. And you can get the entire archive, which means all the spring training stuff and hundreds of episodes, and for another 72 hours through the
through
weekend.
Monday.
Yeah.
Through Monday.
We're giving you guys 50% off a month of the Patreon. So if you want to sign up, go through the end of spring training, get all the updates from Fort Myers and also leading you right into the season.
Yeah.
You can get it for 50% off, which ends up being $1 a week. And you're going to get like 2 or 3 episodes for that $1.
You'll get it all the way through opening day at this point. For $4, you'll get all of the rest of spring training, all of the past of spring training, and anything else you want to listen to over from the last, 6 years, 7 years we've been doing this. So.
Yeah. Go listen to that. And you know what? We're going to put a small clip of our hour-long interview just to give you guys a little sample of the vibes with the managers and the type of stuff we were discussing. Tickle your behind with a feather, such as it is. We're going to put that, midway through the. I adjusted from Patreon to the free one because this is a non-express. I used behind. That's something. That's progress for me. Somebody did note that I was swearing a couple times in the Shelton interview, and I said, well, that's just to show how comfortable I was after a quarter of a beer. And also I often will swear early in an interview to make it clear to the guest that is an open door for them if they should choose. I don't think he swore. He might have dropped an S-bomb or something. But go listen, patreon.com/Gleeman, get the Shelton interview, get everything else. So, and we'll put a little clip maybe midway through roughly of this episode too.
Yeah.
So, and we're hoping as the season goes on, and we've already kind of discussed this with some of the Twins communications folks, we're hoping this kind of opens the door to more interviews with players and coaches and front office. And we've had our fair share over the years, but it's something that we've talked a little bit about maybe leaning into more, assuming the people are into it. That's the thing about our show. I don't want anybody on this show that isn't into doing the show, because that's just not the type of show we're trying to do. Right. And so that's going to, make for a shallower pool of potential guests, but we got some in mind. So
we don't want any listeners that aren't into the show either. Like you don't want to be on the Patreon. Don't be on the Patreon. We don't want your money. That's right.
Yeah, that's right. We want only hardcore.
That's right.
Either lovers or haters of Gleeman and the Geek. That works either way.
That's right.
So we'll get into this a little bit deeper, I guess, with the rotation, because, the Festa part, it's funny because if you would have told me, middle of last year, All-Star break, let's say, even when he was pretty inconsistent, Festa, and not pitching all that well. Now, we come to find out he had been pitching through pretty significant shoulder problem at that point. So it makes sense why he was inconsistent. I probably would have assumed pre-trade deadline, would have assumed he'd have a spot waiting for him in this year's rotation.
Yep.
Now, I said, they add Bradley and they add Abel and they add Rojas, who's a little further away. And so that makes for a little bit more of a logjam. But I still probably would have guessed, Festa will be the 4th or 5th starter. But the reality is, once he reported to camp and was not ready to pitch in games, and again, we now know that he was having, significant shoulder problems still, then it was like, well, I kind of viewed him as the odd man out there as the race was starting for that spot, which is unfortunate because I've been a big believer in Festa. I still am if I think he's going to be healthy. I just have such doubts with that. And the sad part is a lot of young starters, you talk about him and you'd say, well, they got a really good fastball. They got an okay slider. Changeup stinks, or, whatever it is stinks. They don't have a pitch.
They don't have the third pitch that can turn you from a mediocre starter into here's a big arm.
Right. Or it can turn you into a reliever if you never develop that third pitch.
Right.
And really, it's not so much that you need a third pitch. I mean, you'd like a 4th or 5th pitch, whatever. Mm-hmm. It's that you need a non-fastball swing and miss weapon, a thing that you can put hitters away with, let's phrase it that way, that you can deploy against righties and against lefties. And there are some pitches where it can
be
do
the same pitch. Right.
2 birds with 1 stone.
Maybe. Yeah.
But most of the time, it'll be like, okay, a right-handed pitcher will use, let's say, a slider against righties and a changeup against lefties.
Right.
And that's
the off-speed stuff tends to play towards one side or the other.
Right.
Right. Not a curveball. Curveballs often can go to both sides, but most of the other off-speed pitches generally play to one side better than the other. Right.
Well, and that's why the splitter is kind of coming back in vogue, because that's one of the few that can play pretty equally against both if you throw it well. And a lot of pitchers just struggle, especially to find that pitch against the opposite side. If you're a lefty against righties, if you're a righty against lefties, that's what made, let's say, Johan Santana so amazing, because he had the best changeup in the world, and he was actually better against righties because of it, and because it neutralized them. And so, getting back to Festa, the disappointing part, of the frustrating part of him now showing some real durability concerns that might make him no longer a starter, is that he was as well equipped as any young pitcher they've had in quite a while. He had a 95-mile-an-hour plus fastball. He had a very good slider that he could throw and really neutralize righties, and even occasionally throw it against some lefties. And he had a really good changeup that he could throw consistently to get swings and misses against lefties. And that's what elevated him, in my mind, to a top 100 prospect coming up and a very promising young arm. And I do think we saw glimpses of that at times, but it's also just so hard to evaluate him now in retrospect, knowing all the arm problems that he's had. Because I don't know that we ever got more than like a handful of starts in a row where it was like, oh, this is actually Festa. Like this is the 100% Festa. And so that's not to say he wouldn't also be able to utilize those same pitches to become a very good reliever. I mean, it's not like there's a limit to good pitches in the bullpen.
Sure.
But I did think he was probably, compared to, let's say, Zebby Matthews, much more suited for kind of a typical starter approach of, I throw my fastball against everyone, I throw this one off speed against righties, I throw this other off speed against lefties, and those were both better pitches than his fastball a lot of the time. So it's if this ends him as a starter, that is a little bit of a shame. But if it does, the most important thing is just get him healthy. I mean, he's a major league arm, whether it's in the bullpen or starting.
Yeah, it's not totally clear that this problem is related to starter versus reliever workload. Even at this point, like even if they wanted, I don't think that if they move him to relief, they are sure that the shoulder issue is going to go away. They, like you said, they've got to get him healthy, and then they'll figure out where he can actually land. It's just, in general, a lot of starters end up getting moved to the bullpen in part because they just can't hold up to the starter's workload. Right.
Yeah, I mean. There's no shame in that.
And maybe that's part of what's going on with Festa, but we're not totally sure.
Yeah. I mean, they're not even thinking about role at this point. They're just trying to get healthy. I'll point to John Duran, 4 years ago, where he missed almost the entire previous season at AAA, where he was a starter with 3 or 4 very good pitches, as we've seen. And they just said, we don't think he's going to hold up as a starter. He can be a reliever. And I'm sure we had similar conversations then where it was like, oh, that's a shame, because obviously he has great stuff, but he did have weapons to use against both sides of the plate. It turns out you can do that as a reliever too. And, he was a dominant reliever in part because his fastball wasn't always the pitch that he needed to go to. So don't rule out David Festa totally as a starter. Also, don't rule it out that he can still make a big, big impact as a reliever. But I think, unfortunately, it's going to be a while till we find that out one way or the other. And then on the heels of losing Lopez, which is official now. He had Tommy John, was it yesterday or Wednesday?
Wednesday, I think.
Yeah, down in Dallas, Dr. Keith Meister, who's kind of taken over for James Andrews as the go-to Tommy John guy at this stage.
And the news on that was about as good as it could be expected. Other than, you're undergoing Tommy John surgery, you're going to be out a year. They ended up using able to use the brace procedure. That ends up, and what they saw was what they expected to see, and maybe even a little better than what they expected to see. And as such, they're still sort of in the, we think this is going to be closer to a year than a 14 to 16 to 18 month kind of recovery. So, and that's important given the timing of this particular piece, given that it happened, beginning of or middle of February, and he's got 13 months now to prepare for the 2027 season. If the 2027 season starts on time, which it might not. So,
and we talked about that with the initial injury. There is no silver lining to losing your best pitcher for a year.
Right, correct.
On the field, off the field, it sucks for him. It sucks for the Twins. Everything, but it's significantly better to suffer this injury in mid-February than even mid-April or mid-May, because it's theoretically only going to wipe out one season, whereas if you have it midway through a season, you're looking at 2 seasons that are significantly affected by it. So, there's a lot of bridges to cross before you get to that point. But so Lopez out for the year. Festa, I would say, out indefinitely. I think they've officially said he's shut down for 2 or 3 weeks, but he'll have to ramp back. He'll basically have to have spring training all over again, even if he's healthy. We should also note Joe Ryan. We were at Northport about to watch Was it? No,
No,
we were
this was
home
it was home
against
game
the
versus
Red
Boston. Yeah,
Sox.
yeah,
The spring training opener, right?
yes, yeah. That's right.
Um,
That's right.
and we were joking that this was a good opportunity for the Red Sox to take a long look at Joe Ryan after trying to trade for him last year. And about 10 minutes before he was set to take the mound, he had already warmed up and everything on the field. He gets scratched with what they said was lower back soreness or tightness and went for an MRI exam, which is always something that's scary to hear. But that came back. I think it just showed inflammation. Now,
Yeah,
anybody with back problems, and that includes me for sure, there is
yeah,
no just with back problems, but he's already resumed throwing. It sounds like he's going to throw a bullpen session over the weekend.
yeah.
And the real question with him now, if this doesn't recur, he'll have plenty of time to get ready for opening day. Obviously, like we said, he's still got a month. But the real question is he still planning to participate in the WBC for Team USA, which
Right.
essentially he would leave camp early next week, right?
So I think he was supposed to leave on Sunday. He was supposed to leave on March 1st, was what we were told. I mean, there are players here that are also, going. I think he can go as late as March 1st because the United States camp is in Arizona. But I mean, the people who are going to Japan and such, they're leaving on like the 27th, 20. I mean, they were leaving today or tomorrow. So yes, I think he was scheduled to be leaving on Sunday. We will see whether or not maybe it's based on how the bullpen goes as to what he's doing. We have not heard one way or the other whether he is. What we have heard is that he and the Twins are aligned on sort of what they are looking for to decide whether or not. Now, whether that alignment carries through his bullpen session, and
Yeah.
a yes or no answer is we'll see.
Well, it's when initially, even when they announced pretty quickly, it's a relatively minor back issue. The next day, we get the update that it's just inflammation. Even hearing that, which was now what, half a week ago or whatever, I was like, he's not pitching in the WBC. Because
Right.
just logically, any kind of speed bump here,
Right.
even if it's a 10-day injury, and it's not even an injury, it's just, a 10-day issue. Well, if you're the team,
Right.
you're already making concessions, and I have no problem with it. I would encourage teams to let guys play if they want to play in the WBC. Obviously, Buxton's going on Team USA. They got other guys going too. But you are making a concession. You're sort of handing over your valuable thing,
Right. Yeah.
something you really care about, and also you're very, especially with pitchers, particular about how they are going to ramp up and their routine during spring training. You're handing it over to different trainers and different coaches, and you can't have eyes on that at all times. So there's a little bit of probably uncertainty with teams already, and so anything that puts a speed bump in front of that, it's like, well, why don't you stay in camp? And to that point, Taj Bradley announced a day or two ago he was scheduled to pitch for Team Mexico, and we talked to him about it in Northport
Yes.
after his first start of spring, and he said his grandmother's from Mexico, and as a kid, his family visited there quite a bit, and he liked it. And Randy Rosarino, who's actually from Cuba, but got to the United States by way of Mexico when he defected from Cuba 10 years ago or whatever, introduced Taj Bradley to the GM of the Team Mexico, and he was excited about pitching. But then he announced after making one start for the Twins, he's opting out of pitching for Team Mexico, which means he'll stay in Twins camp, which is kind of the flip side of that's the player version of what I was talking about
Right.
from the team's point of view. And here's what I think happened with Bradley, I suspect, is that, my sense in the 2 weeks I was at camp, and I wrote about this a little bit today for The Athletic, is I think he has a real leg up on a rotation spot and might be even viewed as the number 3 guy in the hierarchy at this point behind Joe Ryan and Bailey Ober, who are your kind of locked in veterans. I think they really have high hopes for him, which was clear when they traded Griffin Jax
Sure.
for him straight up at the deadline. But beyond that, I think they view him as the best combination of both experience, because he's got almost 400 innings in the majors, but also he's still only 24, and he certainly has upside that he hasn't shown yet. So I think that they really would like, let's put it this way, they would really like Taj Bradley to grab hold of one of those 3 open rotation spots. And I think they're putting him in a position where it's kind of his to lose. And so if he's gotten that same feeling, either explicitly being told that by someone, or he's just, reading between the lines like I tried to do, well, then you might say, okay, this is kind of my big chance here.
Right.
Like, do I really want to leave this environment and be out of sight, out of mind with the
Sure.
coaching staff and the manager, a lot of whom are new, um, and come back 3 weeks from now, who knows what's changed? Who knows
Yeah.
who's looked good, who's looked bad, whatever. And
Yeah.
so I get it from that perspective. I'm sure he would have enjoyed pitching for Mexico. So that's kind of two sides to the same coin.
Yeah,
Which,
well, I mean, if you're pitching for Mexico, you just don't have the control that you have in camp to make sure that
right.
you're getting stretched out and you're getting your starts every 3, 4, 5 days, and you're working with your pitching coach and you're working on this grip or whatever that you're working through. And so, it is, and I mean, it's a distraction. That's all there is to it. And I don't think he wants to be distracted right now.
Yeah.
He wants to be focused in on securing one of those rotation spots and getting himself into a really positive situation come April. So
Yeah, he was interesting to talk about or talk to.
yeah,
I
he
should say
was.
after his start. He was really chatty, and
Yeah,
I
and
thought,
we've
I think,
and I've heard he was not as much
yeah,
last year.
it's
I thought he was media savvy. Actually, I found myself midway through that interview going, "Oh, you could probably do like announcing or something
yeah.
after this thing." Like, and everybody was like, "That was very weird." They was
We charm everyone, John. Our beat.
I guess so.
But yeah, he talked a little bit. I mean, he was happy with his performance against the Braves lineup that had a lot of their actual guys in it, Acuna and Riley and Olson. It was pretty much the
Yeah.
Braves' actual lineup,
Right.
and he
Because
looked
it was
really
their
good.
because it was their grapefruit season
Right.
opener. Right. Yeah, that's the way it tends
And
to
he
work.
looked really good. Velocity was good. He talked about working on a little bit of a revamped two-seamer, which is a sinker, revamping the splitter, hoping to be able to lean on that more. And then he also, the quote that I liked that I used in my article was, he was saying that being able to add LaTroy Hawkins to the coaching staff as bullpen coach, but as we've noted before, bullpen coach is just a title. He works with
Right.
all the pitchers. Taj Bradley kind of said, well, Pete Mackey, the pitching coach, is kind of on the science side, and LaTroy's kind of the art side.
Right.
And if you can combine art with science is kind of my goal. That's kind of the messaging. I like that. I mean, I think that's what modern coaching, especially on the pitching side, but also on the hitting side, has kind of tried to find that sweet spot where you are blending the technology and the data and just all the information that is at everyone's fingertips over the last 5 or so years. And that's only going to grow further. But there is some art to it. There is some old
Right.
school to it.
Yeah.
And certainly LaTroy is very well versed in the new school stuff, which is why I think he's going to be a great coach. But he is as old school as they come. I mean, he's 21 years in the majors.
Right.
Like, and the way
Well,
he
and
talks,
what we've seen from the Twins bullpen in particular, but also a little bit from their starting rotation, is you see these numbers, you're like, well, his underlying numbers are better than the actual results, especially in the bullpen, but even a little bit in the rotation. And that is the difference between maybe science and art. That is the difference between, okay, I mean, you've shown that you've got the stuff. Now let's make sure that we can see those results on the field. So, oh geez,
ooh, I like this. There's the motion sensor. If you're on YouTube, which you should be watching this on YouTube, you just see now your camera's going to take 3 hours.
I
to
don't know.
reset that.
I know what I'm going to do is I'm going to go turn on the fan here. So I'm going to step away from this thing for a
Okay.
second while we do this.
I'll filibuster, John.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
It's on motion sensors. This is always one of my favorite parts of spring training that I always forget about. Like, here's John getting up. He's gonna turn. I'm using my play-by-play skills. I'm the new Kenny Albert. Here he is. He's back. If you're only audio, you're saying, "What the hell are they talking about?" Sorry about that. So rotation. To finish up this thought, you got Bradley staying in camp. You got Lopez out for the year. You got Festa out indefinitely. You got Ryan, I'm going to guess staying in camp, but possibly not. And you're going to have to monitor his back issue throughout spring training just to be sure. All those things together has created a situation where, like we talked about, they've been touting their rotation depth for damn near a year now. And certainly this spring, everyone you talk to that was what they were going to lean on to carry this team. And on one hand, if you're going to lose a couple of key guys, losing them from a place of strength leaves you at least with some semblance of strength. Whereas if they had lost them from the bullpen or the lineup or something, you're left with not much. On the other hand, I don't know that you can really look at this group that they have now, minus Lopez and also minus Festa, and even really call this a strength. And I don't mean a strength on this team. I mean, something has to be the strongest point of this team.
Right.
And I think probably it's still the starting rotation, unfortunately.
Sure. Yeah.
But I mean, relative to the 30-team environment of Major League Baseball, I think now I would probably say that the rotation is somewhere around average-ish, which I know is one of my favorite terms. But so if that's your strength, yeah, and we kind of went through this step by step on the Patreon of like, yeah, Joe Ryan's fine as a number one starter, but he's not a great number one starter. He's just a solid number one guy. Bailey Ober prior to last year had been a solid number two starter, but now there are a lot of big questions with him, performance-wise, health-wise, and everything.
Including the fact that we haven't seen him in the spring training game yet. He's been doing live BPs, and the explanation is, well, we're building him up. We're trying to get his mechanics. He says we're trying to get my mechanics straightened out, etc. We are a week into games now. He's had opportunities to be available, and we haven't seen him yet. So I'm not saying that's necessarily a foreboding sign, but the fact is that he's coming off an injury last year. He worked to try to get his hip replacement, and we haven't seen him yet in a game. And I'll be, it might be nothing, but it's notable that he hasn't been in a game yet. So
let's put it this way: if a veteran player, came to camp and was feeling 100% and was confident about everything, they'd be playing in games.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean that not playing in games early is a negative, or that it's, a precursor to some injury, or it's going to say they're going to have a bad season. But, we saw that with Festa now, obviously. Hendricks is the other one who hasn't appeared in a game, but he's working back from a shoulder surgery at the end of last season. Same thing with Bailey Ober. Now, while I was there, we talked to Bailey Ober a couple different times.
Sure.
And, I thought he was pretty revealing last year while going through all these struggles. So I do kind of take what he says at face value, maybe more than the average player. And he did say, I'm feeling good. We feel like we've figured this out without surgery, which I'm always a little skeptical of, time off being the cure for something that affected you for an entire season. But yeah, I mean, if you don't see him in a game, let's say next week, then I think not the alarm bells, but you'd start to think,
Well, my understanding is he did a live BP earlier this week, and I think he's doing another live BP, which would be his next turn in the rotation this weekend, like I think Sunday. Yeah. So the earliest we're probably going to see him in a game would be Friday next week.
Yeah. Now, let's just also note this. There are some pitchers, and especially veteran starting pitchers, who prefer to just spend spring training working on the side. Sure. In kind of the controlled environment. Some of them don't like to give things away to opponents that they're going to face during the season. Some of them are more tinkering and trying new things and don't want their ERA to look terrible and don't want to give up a bunch of homers. And so they say, well, let's do it on the side and actually we talked quite a bit, and you guys are going to hear a clip in it shortly, where some of the discussion with Derek Shelton about this, where I kind of asked him, like, first of all, are you in agreement that spring training performance doesn't matter? And, spoiler alert, he mostly agreed with us. But there's a way now to measure spring training performance that is not batting average, ERA, that sort of thing, that has all these external factors, where it's more you can look at individual pitches and individual swings, and you can use tech and data to kind of break it down a little bit
Velocity
more.
And spin rate and launch angle. And exit
you don't even,
velocity,
a lot of times, you don't even need an opponent for that. And you certainly can use a teammate as an opponent for that. And so some pitchers, I think, feel like I can work on all the stuff I need to work on and get the same information and test it the same way without having to go on TV and throw a pitch that I'm not comfortable throwing yet to a hitter who might actually hit it for a home run. So maybe there's some of that with Bailey Ober. But, it is something to watch, because they're basically, for all the talk about who's the odd man out and who, sending guys to AAA as a starter and maybe moving a guy or two to the bullpen to help, they're basically now 3 weeks in.
Yeah.
They're down Lopez, they're down Festa, which means you essentially have 6, what I would say, major league ready or major league caliber starters for the 5 rotation spots.
If Ryan and Ober are both healthy, they have 1 extra left over right now. Right. Yeah. So.
Which, look, there are definitely teams, believe me, and there are many teams throughout Twins history who would kill to have 6 starters they like for 5 spots. Right. That means you can send one of them to AAA as your in-season depth, which you're surely going to need. They've done that with Ober in the past. They've done that with Varlin in the past. They've done that with other kind of major league caliber pitchers. Have them start the season in the AAA rotation, knowing damn well by the end of April you're going to need a 6th starter, and so you keep them ready. Or you could send him to the bullpen in the majors and boost that group that I think, in my opinion, needs a boost, especially from the right side. When there were 8 guys for 5 spots, we were daydreaming about all sorts of scenarios. Right. You send 1 to AAA, you send 2 to the bullpen. Well, now it's like, okay, you're going to have 1 guy, and that assumes the rest of them, like you said, get through the next month feeling good, pitching good, feeling healthy, which is always a crapshoot with pitching. Right. And so it definitely has changed the outlook for me you lose Pablo at the front end, that changes it in a big way in terms of just steadiness, upside, all that. But the depth was also part of it. And
Yeah,
because if
right.
you look back, pretty much every season, every team is using at minimum 7 or 8 starters on a semi-regular basis. And probably 10 or 12 starters, given at least a couple of starts here or there. And so it's nice to have 6 for 5 spots on February 27th. That just means you can handle one setback in
Right.
one place, which is going to happen, obviously. And here's the other part. One, these injuries clarify so that there's only going to be one odd man out, and we can talk in a second about who we think that might be and what the Twins would be better off doing with that person. But then the other thing is it also affects, like, well, who's the 7th guy now?
Right.
Because odds are we're going to see their 7th starter by the end of, let's say, May.
Yep.
And who is that? And instead of being, let's say, Festa or Zebby Matthews or Mick Abel, I think their 7th guy probably is now Andrew Morris.
Maybe, or Connor Prelip.
Or Connor Prelip, except Connor Prelip has, 10 innings at AAA?
Right, that's right.
Has workload considerations in terms of, kind of limiting him.
You're right.
He only threw 82 innings last year, and we're not even 100% sure that Connor Prelip is going to stick as a starter because of those durability concerns. So I just feel like if they lose a couple more guys here, which I'm not rooting for, believe me, I feel like it would be Morris, and that's not the end of the world. There are definitely teams for whom Morris would be one of their better starting pitching prospects. He's got a couple years of part-time experience at AAA. He finished last season pretty well. I think he kind of fits the definition of just about MLB ready, but he just has a lot less upside than these other guys that we were sort of talking about in that
He
role.
struggled with a lot of injuries last year, or kind of a half season or 2/3 of a season in AAA last year. So he's not completely out of the woods in terms of injury concerns. And beyond that, and beyond even Connor Prelip, they've also got Kendry Rojas, who they acquired in the Varland trade, and he's looked pretty good here in camp so far. They're excited, but he also had a terrible introduction to AAA, and he's also very young for that level. And then John Klein, let's not forget about him, the somewhat kind of surprising addition to the 40-man roster over there, is somebody who's still, as last I heard, still being trained up to be a starter. Wow. And he might also be a something as well. So,
but what Shelton said is, we're training everybody up to be a starter.
Of course, right.
Because you can tamp it down to reliever. You can't do the opposite.
That's right.
And I mean, I think Rojas and Klein have the same thing as Prelip to some extent. Like, I'm not even certain they're actually starters long term. And so having, let's say, Mick Abel or Zebby Matthews as your 6th guy, that's not a bad scenario. That's better than most 6 starters when the season begins. And even having Andrew Morris as your 7th guy, as kind of your second in waiting at AAA, is better than a lot of teams in that regard. He's just untested. He's never pitched in the majors.
Sure.
But I do think, he profiles as like a decent, below average but decent starting pitcher that I think they could spot in there. But then, like the names we just mentioned, I don't know who their 8th guy, their 9th guy, their 10th guy. Maybe in 3 months, some of the, Prelip, Rojas, Klein, etc., or another starting pitching prospect has emerged. But they might not have 3 months to wait on needing those guys. And what they really didn't do, and we talked about this at the beginning because they felt like they had so much starting pitching depth, they brought in a whole bunch of relievers on non-roster invite minor league contracts.
Right.
They really didn't go shopping in that bin for starters. To kind of, the rehab projects or a veteran kind of trying to pitch one more season, that type of guy. And I'm sure there are still some guys available. There's still 2 prominent free agents available, which we are going to get to. But first, let's talk about our presenting sponsor.
That's
our
right.
fine friends at Black Stack Brewing.
Black Stack Brewing, where we're going to have a Twins Daily opening day party. So put that on your calendar. The first road game versus Baltimore. I think that's a 2:00 start Central. We'll be watching that game at Black Stack Brewing, so you can check out their fantastic beers there, or you can check it out at your local liquor store because now they're being distributed everywhere. Listen, they're one of the premier beer makers, certainly in the Twin Cities. They're the ones that are invited to all the national competitions and so on. I think a lot of it's based on sort of how good their hazies and IPAs are. But, if you, like we found out Derek Shelton, doesn't much care for hazy IPAs, you want the more traditional stuff, Slopes Pilsner is one of the top craft Pilsners, I think, in the Twin Cities. They've also got the Pull Tabs Pale Ale and Uncut Jams. And they've even got if you're a non-alcoholic person, you want to try Nopes, which is a takeoff on Slopes. It's their non-alcoholic beer, and that's also been something that has been recommended by people that drink non-alcoholic beer to me. So check them out at your local liquor store. Also check them out at their tap room. That's where we're going to have the opening day watch party. Aaron himself visited it not just a couple weeks ago with Phil.
One of the few places I've enjoyed going ever. Just let's lay it out there like that.
That's right.
It's a great spot, a really cool, like huge place, but they have it sort of compartmentalized so that it is cozy. Big screen, massive screen that you can watch, like you said, opening day on. Right. And the people there could not have been nicer. And I will say this, they are listeners.
Yes,
and
they are.
If you're thinking, oh, that's interesting, I can go drink beer, I can go watch the Twins, I can go hang out with some fellow Gleeman and the Geek enjoyers.
That's right. The owners, owner and president, such they're all Gleeman and the Geek listeners, big fans. So, and we're big fans of them too. So ask for them at your local liquor store, or enjoy a beer on tap and take a 4-pack home with you. You just mentioned the code word Gleeman and the Geek for $2 off a 4-pack when you visit their tap room.
Okay, so couple more quick things on the rotation, then we maybe let's talk some hitting too. I feel like we've talked pitching so much this spring, but because that's where the news has been. Right. But so my view, and tell me if you disagree with this, of the kind of 6 guys for 5 spots, I would separate it into 3 groups. You have 3 groups of 2, let's say, 3 pairs.
The 2 veterans, the 2 kind of veterans, and the 2
sort of
new guys. Yeah,
I would say you have the locked-in veterans from a performance, track record, expectation, but also guaranteed salary standpoint, which is Joe Ryan and Bailey Ober.
Sure.
Then I would say you have what I would call kind of your preferred young guys, which I would say it's sort of whatever, Delta preferred. It's still not a first-class seat.
Sure.
But you got a little more leg room. You got a little more room. You got a little more leeway from a performance standpoint, where you don't have to have an incredible spring and you could maybe still win a spot. And I would put that as Taj Bradley for the reasons I talked about, and then Simeon Woods-Richardson, because he's just been a solid starter for them the past couple of years, where most of these other guys have not.
Yeah.
And then I would say you have the third pairing, which is the young guys who, in a way, Zebby Matthews and Mick Abel, they might have the most upside of the whole group if everything clicks for them.
Sure.
I mean, they certainly, from like just a pure velocity and raw stuff standpoint. But Zebby's got like a 5.75 ERA through 25 starts with the Twins. And Mick Abel had a great final start against the Phillies, the team that traded him away, to finish the season. But before that was a little bit shaky for the Twins. And, I think he only has 35 or 40 innings of major league experience overall.
Right. Less than a year's worth of stuff. It's sort of the separator between those two. Yep.
And so is that like, I'm not saying that Derek Shelton has revealed this to us or anything. This is just me kind of reading between the lines. And now that maybe was more important with how we perceive these groups when they had 7 or 8 competing for 5 spots. But now, what do the groups matter? We're just basically trying to figure out who the 6th guy is here.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And there's a few ways you could go with this, because if the intention with the 6th guy, the guy who doesn't win one of the 5 opening day spots in the rotation, I think my answer would be different if you told me the Twins intend to send that guy to AAA versus the Twins intend to just move that guy into the bullpen early in the season. Because to me,
maybe,
if you said the loser of this 6 guys for 5 spots battle is going into the Twins bullpen, either as a long multi-inning reliever or maybe as a setup man, I would say, well, let's see what Zebby can do 1 inning at a time.
Sure.
Just airing it out. I bet he can get to 100. He can pare down the pitches, so he's basically fastball slider. I would be very intrigued by that. On the other hand, I'm not saying I want to give up on him as a starter.
Sure.
But if you said the guy who doesn't win a rotation spot,
I'd also be intrigued by that by Abel, though, for that matter.
To me, Abel is so much different. Not from he does have stuff that I'm
just
sure
because
would
of
play.
The control.
Well, Abel's got 6 pitches.
Yeah, right.
The pitch mix is not the problem with Abel, and maybe the control is the problem with Abel.
Yes, right.
And to your point, maybe if his control just never comes around, it will be easier for him to throw winning inning at a time. Lacking control is much less of an issue often in the bullpen. That is one reason why guys move to the bullpen.
Yeah.
So I get where you're coming from on that. But to me, 2 things. One, raw stuff-wise, I'm sure Abel would be a good reliever. I'm sure Zebby would be a good reliever.
Right.
All these guys, I would guess, would be a good reliever.
Right.
But with Zebby, the reason he intrigues me out of the bullpen is, one, I think his stuff can jump even further and really would be upper echelon velocity. But beyond that, I'm not sure he has 3 pitches that he can trust. And so the more he's bullpen bound, the more you can pare down the pitch mix and really just focus on kind of overpowering hitters. With Abel, who does have overpowering raw stuff at times, he has like 4 or 5 good pitches beyond the mid-90s fastball. Like he has good off-speed pitches. He has a sinker that he throws. He has a changeup. He has 2 breaking balls. The issue with him isn't so much the number of major league caliber pitches. It's just, can he throw them over the plate?
Correct.
And maybe these are just kind of
that isn't a great thing to have in the bullpen. Like somebody,
right?
Because
it takes away the strength, which is you have a bunch of quality pitches, and in the bullpen at most you're going to probably use 3. That doesn't mean he can't be a good reliever. I mean,
and it also leans into a weakness that's especially big weakness when you're in the bullpen, because you want to be able to have enough control to not be putting people on base. You need to come in and throw strikes, right?
Although the 1 inning at a time has solved that for a lot of similar pitchers, where it's just like air it out, max velocity. You know, sometimes it solves control. I mean, to your point though, if your control remains bad, well, the worst place for bad control is trying to pitch the 8th inning of a close game or something like that. So it's possible that, you know, Zebby's shallow pitch mix is a path to the bullpen, and on the other side of the street, there's a similar path to the bullpen that is Mick Abel's poor control. It's possible they both lead to the same spot, but in the immediate, I would be much more inclined to send Zebby to the bullpen. And honestly, he could be kind of a tandem starter there. He could pitch 2 innings at a time there. It's not relegating him to relief work for the rest of his life necessarily. Where I would be more inclined with Abel to send him to AAA, have him be kind of that 6th starter in waiting, continue to throw 5 or 6 innings at a time. Not because I think he has nothing left to prove at AAA. He was awesome at AAA last year. I mean, he will devour AAA hitters if they give him a chance. But I feel like he's more a traditional starter pitch mix. B, he's only made like 6 starts in the majors. So to give up on him as a starter, I think would it make even less sense than Zebby, who's thrown like 25. I think neither of them should be given up as a starter. So that's kind of how I'm viewing it. Now, we could be wrong. Maybe I'm reading the tea leaves wrong on Bradley. Maybe I'm overrating how much weight they are giving to Simeon Woods Richardson being an effective 4th or 5th starter in back-to-back years because he lacks the upside maybe, or the velocity of some of these other guys. But that's kind of how I'm viewing it is Ryan Ober locked in, Bradley and Simeon Woods Richardson kind of that middle, and then maybe Zebby and Abel fighting over that 5th spot.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, I don't know how that's going to go. I don't know if those 4 are feeling that good, but I think I'm kind of looking forward to. I guess I would say I have a similar hierarchy right now, but I also view this a little bit like, hey, 2 weeks from now when so comes off the IL, who's going to be whose roster spot is going to be there? Like, this group has to make it healthy all the way through another 4 weeks of spring training. And there's already like 2 veterans that I'm already a little bit worried about.
Let's say this. If the injury pace continues at this level,
they will have 0.
No, they'll have -4 starting pitchers on opening day.
That is correct. Yeah, that's right. So, and I also think the discussion of like which one would be if they were going to move one to the bullpen is also kind of a moot point at the point. They're not moving any of these guys to the bullpen anytime in the near future, right? Like
you can't afford, even if it is Zebby, and even if they agree with some of the logic that I laid out there. The truth is, whoever the 6th guy, the odd man out is, has to 95% in my mind has to go to the AAA rotation. Because someone has to be ready to step into the major league rotation, whether it's early, hopefully it's a couple months from now. But you will absolutely need someone to quickly step in.
I actually wonder about the same thing with the 4 guys that we talked about that are underneath these 6. You know, like how anxious are they going to be? I mean, are they even open to the idea right now of Prelip or Klein or Rojas or Miller going to the bullpen? Whereas they might have been a little more open to that idea when they already had 3 of those spots in the 3 of those spots in AAA already taken, and we're trying to figure out what to do with those other guys. And I just don't know. I mean, I right now they've had enough confirmed injury problems. Like, we've got at least 3, right? And one we think is coming back here soon. And we don't know exactly what's going on over. Like, at some point they'd just be like, we need to keep stretching guys out because we just don't know how many we're going to need. So
the last thing on this, when Lopez went down, we did like an emergency episode from spring training about that, probably in that very room you're sitting in right there. Um, and one of the things we talked about was, do they need, having lost Lopez, who's their number one starter, should they be trying to turn to free agency where at that point, there were three, I would say, good starters left. One of them, Max Scherzer, has since re-signed with the Blue Jays. If we're being realistic, he was never coming to Minnesota. But that leaves Lucas Giolito, who had a real solid season last year, has had a bunch of injuries throughout his career, but has generally been a solid mid-rotation starter. And old friend Zach Littell, who has sort of resurrected his career late by switching back to the rotation in Tampa Bay a few years ago, and doesn't have the upside of Giolito, but has been a solid back-end starter. He throws strikes, etc. The Twins know him as a person, all that. Those are really, in my mind, and there's some other guys, scrap heap type of guys, rehab projects. But if you're going to actually try to bring in someone who can stabilize the rotation and be maybe a number 3 starter or better, those are really the only two names that are still unsigned at this late date. And I think we both kind of came to the conclusion after the Lopez injury that, well, we wouldn't mind them spending, I don't know, 10, 12, 15 million on Giolito or something. Like, if I'm all for the Pohlad spending money pretty much in any situation. If you work at Chipotle and one of them comes through the line, double charge them for guac. They'll be fine. So that's my approach to that. And it's not going to hurt the rotation, obviously. But at that stage, we were like, okay, well, you got one down. Everybody kind of moves up. This is maybe an opportunity for a lot of these young-ish arms that we've just named here in the last few minutes to get that opportunity. And there is some value in that because you got to find out what you have in a lot of these guys. Well, now you lose one of those young guys too in Festa. Now you're in a spot where you really only have one excess starter. Yep. Does that, in your mind, change the, I don't know, kind of your mindset about a Giolito or a Littell?
No.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the fence with that.
I mean, maybe it should, because, what we're talking about now is, we had, let's see. We had previously had like 5 young pitchers that we were looking at, and the top 2 were going to make the rotation, right? So the second best one was sort of setting the floor.
Right.
The second best of those, you take a look at how those 5 performed at the end of the year. The third, fourth, and fifth, how if they were crummy, that's fine. That doesn't set the floor. The top 2 are the ones that you're going to count on. Well, now of those 5, you're taking a look at, you need at least 3 of them, and you don't even have the one of them that you already know is not really an option. So now you've got definitely have less room for error here. Yeah. But I still want to see what these guys can do more than I want to see what Lucas Giolito can do. So, I don't know, maybe I'm buying into the spring Kool-Aid because it's spring and it's Kool-Aid and it's tasty and it's summer. It's like, but I want to see what these guys can do at this point. So
I'm mostly on that same wavelength.
Yes.
But I also think, just so people know, they don't actually give us Kool-Aid in the press box. They do give us Gatorade, which sometimes looks like Kool-Aid.
Yes, that's right.
Just so people know.
That's right.
A lot of orange Gatorade consumed by me.
A lot of orange.
When you're an elite power athlete such as myself, you need to stay hydrated.
That's right. Yeah, that's zero.
When you could be
Gatorade zero. Yeah,
taking up to 60 or 75 steps per day. It's really important to stay hydrated.
And the Aquafina. That's the other thing they use a lot.
But yeah, I'm mostly on that wavelength of like, do I think odds are Lucas Giolito will be better in the 2026 season than Abel or pretty much all these guys? Yeah, I'd probably, if you force me to bet just who will have more WAR, let's say, by the end of the season,
right,
I'd probably take Abel, or I'd take Giolito over. I might take him over Ober at this point. Only worse than Ryan. I mean, he was really good last year, and he's generally been a high 3, low 4 ERA type of guy. But he does have injury concerns. The monetary aspect, I don't care, because they're at $105 million payroll. They give him $30 million, and they'd still have just last year's payroll. But here's what the devil on my shoulder is saying. Do you really think if they were to sign Giolito, or especially if they were to sign an even lesser guy in Littell, that by the end of the season, what are the odds that we're sitting here going, it's a real shame Mick Abel never got a spot in a chance in the rotation, or Zebby Matthews? I mean, realistically, that's just probably delaying the opportunity a little bit. It's providing like one more sort of insulation before you have to get to those guys. And I mean, realistically, that would just mean that, let's say, Abel is joined by Zebby at AAA to start the season.
Yeah.
Or it could maybe mean you move Zebby to the bullpen and send Abel to AAA, something like that. Like it's really just providing one little safer boost to the rotation. I still think odds are you're going to need 7 or 8 starters, all starting at least a half dozen games for you, and maybe a lot more than that. And if that's the case, you're going to get to the end of that depth chart no matter what, basically.
Yeah. I don't have any problem with bringing one of those guys in here. It's somewhat of a coin flip for me. I just don't feel especially compelled to do it right now. So, if this, and that has to do probably with having low expectations right now for what this team is going to do regardless. If I felt this team was, boy, they could be competing for that wild card. I'm not feeling like that, especially right now. Like those 1 or 2 games difference that might be the difference between a Giolito and Nick Abel, being shoved in that position. To me, it just doesn't move the needle enough to justify going and doing that. But if they want to do that to try and bolster what, a rotation that is looking a little banged up right now, it's fine. It's perfectly. It's like I said, it's not my money. That doesn't.
Right. I mean, from a fan morale or a PR perspective, giving somebody $15 million to join this team in spring training probably would at least convince fans that a fraction of Tom Pohlad's big talk about being there's at least some basis in reality, which maybe has value. The other thing I will say is this, I agree with you where I don't think highly enough of this team that I'm like, they need to get a veteran starter to push them over the top. But, we could very easily be wrong about this team, and they're an 81 win team instead of a 75 win team, in which case the extra couple wins maybe that a Giolito could provide could, if not the difference between making the playoffs and not, at least competing for a playoff spot through September or not. The other thing I will add on that front is, maybe you're signing these guys with a 20% belief that they'll actually help you make a run at the playoffs or stay in the race, and an 80% belief that you're just going to end up trading them in July anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
And maybe you get a prospect or two, in which case you essentially just sort of bought a prospect, which I'm not against that idea either. I mean, that can work out well too. How do we want to do this now? Do we want to play them the Shelton clip, or do we want to talk sponsor first? What do we want to do here?
Let's play the Shelton clip. Let's set up the Shelton clip, and then we'll get to the sponsor afterwards.
This is a little chunk, which was my nickname in college. Little chunk. No. Little chunk from the Goonies. That's one of my favorite. Lawrence.
Yes.
I like to do the truffle shuffle every day. I would never do it on camera, but I do like to do the truffle shuffle. This is a little chunk of our sit down with Derek Shelton. It was in his, just to set the stage, it was in his office. It was after a game. We sat down. He offered us some Miller Lights. We all cracked them. We had about an hour-long conversation, which was above and beyond what he had been he had agreed to do, which we appreciate. I would encourage anyone to listen to it, A, because I think it was just a fun, good interview, and we're proud of it. And B, if you want to know who the new manager is, I think we accomplished showing kind of who he is as a person, both in talking about his background and how he got to the spot, but also just giving him a lot of leeway to show his personality and make some jokes and make fun of us or whatever it is. But I also think we did get into a lot of strategy and kind of how the job of a manager has changed and his viewpoint of a lot of things on the field too. So I was really, if you are a Twins fan and you're like, I'd just like to have a better sense of who this dude is on and off the field, I think we provided that. So this is a clip of that, and we will be back on the other side to talk a little bit about some news and notes from camp, and maybe we'll pick a more optimistic topic, maybe with some Emmanuel Rodriguez discussion.
So here's a 9-minute clip of Derek Shelton talking to Gleeman and the Geek.
Does this stuff, as it applies to spring training, because one of the things we've been doing this a long time, we always, every spring, somebody's had some breakout camp and they're not even going to make the team, and we try to tell listeners nobody really cares about spring training stats. You'd rather a guy hit 350 than 150, obviously. But I guess, does the more detailed and the tech now allow you to sort of, in a weird way, you can evaluate spring training, quote unquote, performance, but you're not actually looking at like a guy's batting average or ERA. You're looking more at like individual pitches because those are a little more stable, regardless of kind of the level of competition.
Yeah, I think you explained that really well. And like if the general fan was listening, they are listening to the podcast, that would be the thing you talk about. Like you talk about the fact and you watch the game today, and let's just take Arcia's first at bat,
right,
which is an out, but it's a really good battle at bat.
Yep.
He gets a 2-2 or 3-2 and hits a line drive to right field for a sac fly. Like that doesn't show up, but like that's a good at bat. That is the one thing that we can quantify these days is when the guys hit the ball hard or what the quality of their contact is. And then the other thing in spring training we have to be careful about is the competition they face, because like we saw the end of the game today. Like we have a split squad.
There's a line change that happens, or a couple line changes.
Didn't go well. We had multiple line changes, and today we had 4 guys pitch that aren't even in major league camp, and they scuffle a little bit, and then all of a sudden the game gets out of hand.
But if a guy on the other team hits 2 homers off those guys at the end of camp, it's like, oh, he had a huge camp. It's
but go back and look at what the competition. So we have to make sure that we put all those things into place when we're making evaluations. And then at the end of camp, you're like, well, this guy hit 155. And it's like, yeah, he did. But, you know,
he had 4 hard outs or whatever.
And he had 50 at-bats. He had 50 plate appearances. So we're talking less than a month. We're talking 2 weeks of plate appearances. Right. And sometimes, honestly, you have to look at the back of the baseball card and say, like, all right, this guy's been there and done that. And we kind of got to bet that he's going to do that again once the Major League season starts.
Do you, as like overall this season, and obviously losing Pablo on day one is tough. We interviewed you about that a few times.
Right.
But it felt like that one, did you view it as like one of 2 ways? Okay, we just lost maybe our best pitcher, one of our, all-star caliber pitcher, but coming into the season and all offseason, everyone talked about, well, if there is a strength of this team, it seems pretty clear that it's both quality and quantity of, major league starting pitchers. So in a way, it's like, well, we could withstand that better than if you lost someone from the bullpen or the lineup or whatever. Or do you view it as, well, this was our strength. We were going to kind of lean pretty damn heavily on the rotation, and now we just lost one of 2 all-stars at the top of it. Like, I guess that's half full, half empty kind of thing. But
I think both things can be true.
Yeah.
Like in this scenario, both things are true. And let's go to your first point. Yeah, it was an area of strength, but now we've kind of nicked at that strength a little bit. We go deeper.
It's at minimum less certain.
Right. And the fact that now you have to raise your floor because we know what we're going to get out of Pablo Lopez. Like you do.
Yeah.
You know the caliber of starts you're going to get. And we think our young pitchers have really good stuff, but still they're young pitchers and they don't have that back of the baseball card.
Sure.
On the flip side of it, as much as it stings and hurts, and it does, that Pablo Lopez is going to be out for the year, the fact that it happened the first day, now it did take the vibe down because I thought we had 2 really good meetings. Tom spoke and then I spoke and, was riding the high for about an hour and a half.
3 innings. Yeah. 3 innings of live BP. Yeah.
And then the third up and I'm on the back field and I get a call and I'm like, ooh, damn. Like,
you had a good poker face that day. I'll give you that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
The thing about it is like, in no way taking that away is like, okay, but now we have all spring training to evaluate 3 or 4 guys that can fit into that spot. So if you're going to glass half full it at all, it's at least now we're going to be able to evaluate those guys
versus losing them April 10th or whatever.
If it's April 10th or even March 24th, like we're leaving for Baltimore, that happens. It's like
there's more adjustments on the fly.
So then you're scrambling a little bit more. You never want to lose a player of that caliber, and it's always going to hurt the group. But the fact that now we're going to be able to go through the whole month and be able to make decisions, that's probably a little bit of a silver lining.
So in relation to that, you deal with the Pablo Lopez thing. You also have, games like get away in the second half like they did today, et cetera. You were kind of free and clear for a while. Like you'd been managing. You were 55. You've got a nice family. You live in Treasure Island, nice area. What made you want to come back and do this again? Like I don't mean to. I presume there's a certain love for the game or something. But
did you immediately say when you parted ways with the Pirates? Did you immediately go, I want to do this again?
I want to sign up for this again.
Yeah.
No. Right. No. 100%. No. And the reason why is because I wasn't ready.
Right.
Like I mean, I think the thing that was most effective, maybe is the wrong word, but most eye-opening about doing this job again is the fact that I had 4 months to think about this job again. Because, and you guys have heard me say this, you go through the stages of like, I mean, I was pissed when I first got fired.
Sure.
And then also you're a little bit relieved. Like the stress of like the day-to-day is like, you know, you go home and you're able to hang out with your family and spend the summer. And then you go through like, man, I think I'm pretty good at this. And like, they told me to go home. And then you go through the reflection period of like, number one, to your guys' point, do you want to do this again? Or do you just want to go coach? Or do you want to do a podcast? Or do you want to do radio? Because I was doing media stuff.
Well, that was the other thing.
And I found out you're always right when you do it on this side. So it's like really good.
That's true, yeah.
And you think about it. Like you think about like my youngest is 16. Like, do you want to spend the next 2 years watching her play high school volleyball and do that?
You're approaching empty nest time, baby.
Right, exactly. And then you get to the point of like, okay, this is what I do. And I want to be able to build a staff to be able to impact young players. And then honestly, you see 9 jobs come open. And then you see the job in this job that, you know, and I've said it over and over again, it feels like it's coming home with the people, some of the things we highlighted earlier on. And you want that challenge again. So I don't think if it would have been at the end of the year, I would have been ready to be able to do it, but I needed to go through the stages of reflection to be able to get back to do it. And then ultimately, as my wife has told me numerous times, like, this is the only thing you're actually any good at. So, you know, and it's the only thing really I know, you know, and maybe the good at is everybody has their own opinion on that as we get through it. But like, it's really the only thing that I've only done in my adult life.
I mean, I think a lot of people can relate to that. Like a lot of people have gone through a tough work situation where things get, you know, for whatever, whether it's the industry turns or you get a bad boss or whatever, and things don't work out, and suddenly you're let go, and you've got to go through exactly those stages. Like I think a lot of people can relate to kind of going through that situation. It's interesting to me that you were like, you know what, I want to jump back in.
In a weird way, it almost, like you said, 4 or 5 months, it almost like in your brain, it's like testing. Do I really like want to do this? Because, you know,
I think that's
stress
a great way to put it.
Like emotionally, you're getting back into something there's going to be highs, obviously, which I'm sure is the addictive quality of like, yeah, it's nothing better. But there's going to be lows where it's like, I'm sure there's going to be games you guys get walked out for something. You're probably in the back of your mind like, yeah, I could be doing, MLB Network Radio tomorrow instead of this. Like you said, you're right all the time in that job.
I think that is the case. I mean, you know, you go home and like last winter, I mean, Memorial Day, we had a party at our house. And,
right.
You know, we had everybody over.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the first time in the summertime I had ever had the opportunity
like
to do
decades
that.
probably.
But then you get that like internal fire to do it. And you start to talk to people. The biggest part about it, and in professional sports, you know, it's different a little bit than the real world. I mean, both my parents were teachers, and neither one of them ever got fired. They taught at the same school for a bunch of years, and, you know, they retired and they live in Florida, and it's great. In professional sports, it happens. I mean, the guys that are the best coaches, the best managers, the best head coaches, they get fired. I mean, Harbaugh got fired.
Of course.
John Harbaugh, I'm sorry, got fired this offseason. I mean, he's one of the best coaches in the last 18 years. Tomlin.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure your 6 years in Pittsburgh is well above average for like average length of a, you know, modern day
100%.
like, you know, manager stint.
So like you have to reflect on like what you would do and how you would go about doing it next. And I really think from the people that I've talked to that have done it 2 times, 3 times, you have to be able to seek counsel there of like, okay, what do you need to know going into the next opportunity? That was Derek Shelton talking to Gleeman and the Geek for 9 minutes in his office, cracking some beers. It was I really was happy with how that conversation turned out. And like you said, I think it gives people a real good idea of kind of who he is, not just as a baseball manager and sort of the values and such that, you know, are going to drive his decisions, both, you know, in terms of managing players, but also in managing games. But also a little bit more about, you know, why he is who he is and why he ended up taking a manager job right away. And that's just a short part
of a 45, 50-minute interview.
I think it was about 51 minutes or something like that.
51-minute interview, and you can get the rest of it at patreon.com/Gleeman. And right now, just as a reminder, you get all of our spring training coverage for just $1 a week.
Yep.
So go to patreon.com/Gleeman, but you have to sign up for that. That $1 a week deal is only available till the end of Monday, March 2nd.
Yes. It's a 50% off for a month kind of spring training deal.
That's right.
By the way, here's really the thing about Shelton. He was just a good guest.
Yes, he is.
We've been fortunate because we don't have that many guests. We can kind of pick and choose, and most of our guests are people we know. We rarely have a guest on that we don't really have some comfort level with, like, what their personality is. And I knew him a little bit, Shelton, but like he was just good. Like you can tell he's done radio, like he talked about after getting fired by the Pirates. He did a bunch of MLB Network and stuff. Like he's giving answers that are like not only good answers, but they're answers made for someone to be listening to them on the other end.
Right.
And so, I appreciate that too. I mentioned Emmanuel Rodriguez. I'm not going to say he's going to make the opening day lineup or anything like that. I mean, it's 2 weeks and a couple of homers and he's looked good, but I will give Bobby Nightingale, speaking of good guests, Bobby Nightingale was on in your place, actually, I don't know, a few weeks ago, kind of co-host duties with me. And I think I might have asked him, like, do you have like a hot take before we arrive in spring training? Like some prediction with how things are going to go that would surprise people. And his hot take was that Emmanuel Rodriguez would make the opening day roster. And so every time Emmanuel Rodriguez has homered, which is 2 so far, Bobby has sort of looked at me and, acted like he's Nostra Nightingale. I feel like every year in Twins camp, the 5 or so I've covered, there's one kind of standout prospect. And it's not always that they have some amazing performance in spring training games. It's more the view with coaches, front office, the manager, other players that like, this guy's pretty ready.
Yeah,
like this guy's
becomes an elevated view.
Yes.
And in fact, often, I mean, I think in fact, almost all the cases, they don't make the opening day roster. They are somebody that comes in 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks in, and expectations are high because of what we have seen in spring training. Right.
It's more, well, you're still going to AAA.
Right.
But you impressed everyone. Like you were on everybody's front of their radar. Like we know.
I mean, last year it was Luke Keeschel and Zebby Matthews, right?
Yeah.
Right. The year before it was Brooks Lee and who was the pitcher?
I don't know. And the year before that,
Festa, maybe.
I would say it was Eddie Julian.
Yeah, you're right.
And this isn't to say this is some great predictor of a future greatness.
Exactly.
I mean, that's a pretty mixed bag of guys that we said. Right. But what it does predict is, it kind of clarifies, the Twins not only think highly of this guy, we knew that with Emmanuel Rodriguez, and that's not to say they don't think highly of Kalen Culpepper, and certainly Walker Jenkins is their number 1 prospect.
Right.
And he's played in games too. And, we're talking about Rodriguez because he's had some big swings here. Yeah. If Jenkins goes out and hits a couple homers next week, then we'll talk about him too. It's fun to see the prospects that guys like me have been obsessing about for years and writing about for years and talking about for years. And in this case, Emmanuel Rodriguez signed with them when he was 16 years old.
Right.
And he was a top guy from the moment he signed with them. He's had ups and downs, but he's been essentially a top 100 prospect for 4 or 5 consecutive years now. And there tends to get, we talk about freezer burn with players.
Yep.
And with prospects, I remember thinking this with Royce Lewis. By the time they get to the majors, it's like, we've been talking about this guy for 7 years. Like what? Every weakness has been parsed over and every injury has been magnified. It is fun with a guy like Rodriguez to see him in camp, see him, shoulder to shoulder and swing for swing with guys like Byron Buxton, who he's, by the way, they've positioned all the top prospects next to Byron Buxton in the clubhouse intentionally. And it's fun to just see him and, put eyes on him in major league competition, see him do some of the things that have been touted and guys like me have been writing about, like the power potential is huge. He's a good athlete, all of those sorts of things. And then it's also fun to see like Shelton, when you ask him about him, he talks well about all prospects pretty much, but there's that little extra, like little shininess in the eye, like where it's like, ooh, yeah, Emmanuel Rodriguez, that looked like a pretty good swing. And in the back of his head, he's like, that's going to look really good in the middle of my lineup in about 3 months or 4 months
That's right.
or sooner than that. And so that has been fun to see. Emmanuel Rodriguez, also Jenkins has been playing center field in major league games. Culpepper has been playing some short and some second base. He's made a couple nice plays defensively.
Sure.
Gabriel Gonzalez, who's probably a half step below them as a prospect, but pretty much major league ready as more of a bat first right-handed corner outfielder. He's been fun. You and I had a fun moment where we interviewed via translator about a week ago in the clubhouse, Emmanuel Rodriguez and Gabriel Gonzalez together because they're apparently very good friends. And if you're a fan, to all my short kings out there listening to this, John and I are not short kings, but I have empathy for short kings because it's a tough world out there for you sometimes. These are two short kings who could not be more than about 5'9", in my opinion.
Yep.
And they're friends, and they also have opposite personalities. Where Gonzalez is pretty, at least trying to be translated into English. Gonzalez is more kind of short answers and kind of maybe a little bit shy, which I totally get. You asked me to do an interview in Spanish, and I'm going to come across that way too. Yeah. Whereas Rodriguez, his answers, English, Spanish, whatever, they were long answers. There were some jokes in them and stuff like that. And also from a plate discipline standpoint, you could not find two more different players. Rodriguez does not swing at anything, and Gonzalez swings at everything.
Right. Yeah.
So they were a very fun duo.
As we were interviewing Rodriguez, he made sure he grabbed Gabby Gonzalez and pulled him into the thing. Like you could definitely see the extrovert grabbing the introvert and saying, "Come on, let's do this thing together. Come on." It was great.
This is how you get him to go to Black Stack. You're thinking I'm Gabriel Gonzalez and you are Emmanuel.
Maybe.
Yeah. Well, okay. And so, it's been fun to see these guys in camp. I have no expectation that any of them are going to be even among the later cuts in camp, let alone make the opening day roster. But, stranger things have happened. You never know what happens with injuries. The beauty, and we actually got into this a little bit with Shelton on the podcast, was the Twins do have a good farm system. It's not an amazing farm system. I would say it's probably somewhere in the 8 to 15 range in MLB, depending on who you're talking to. Right. But the beauty of it is, especially if you're a manager, almost all of their top prospects have either already played in the majors or finished last season at AAA, other than Culpepper, really. Yeah. And it's very easy to envision 3 or 4 of these guys in the lineup and a couple of them in the rotation or the bullpen come June 1st, let's say. Yeah. And now my worry is that the Twins can't kind of keep their heads above water until that point.
Yep.
But it will hopefully make for a fun second half. So it has been fun to see all these guys in camp with Rodriguez. And we talked to him about this. Like the key for him really is he has all the tools that you would need to be maybe a starting center fielder, maybe a Gold Glove caliber right fielder. He's got big power from the left side. The best plate discipline you will ever see in that he just refuses to swing at non-strikes.
Yeah.
He's a good athlete. Like that skill set of power and walks, it's usually guys who look like Adam Dunn or Jim Thome. This guy's a 5'10" center fielder, got the speed to play center, got the speed to steal maybe 20 bases. He's a very good athlete. He has a good arm. He checks pretty much every box. The only real question, health, which he struggled with injuries pretty much every year.
Huge question there. Yes.
And does his refusal to swing at anything that isn't a good pitch, can that be turned from a strength to a weakness by polished veteran major league strike throwing pitchers?
That's right.
And we saw that with like Aaron Hicks. We saw that with Eddie Julian to some extent. There is like a real fine line between ultra patient and passive.
Right.
And he seems to recognize that, and the Twins coaches seem to recognize that. When we talk to him, one of the things he wants to work on is, if they're going to try to get ahead of me with a fastball over the plate to begin an at bat, I have to be ready to ambush that pitch and penalize them for doing that.
Yes.
And I don't always want to be 2-2, 3-2, because then one swing and miss is a strikeout, and he has racked up strikeouts. We saw that with Sano, kind of that same push and pull there. But to
Man,
me,
and what is a good pitch in AAA is not necessarily
Right.
a good pitch in the majors. Like a
Right.
good pitch in the majors can be a significantly better pitch. You end up with in a bat sooner or later the guy in AAA might make a mistake and it's going to just catch a little bit more of the plate than he wants to be able to catch.
Right.
In the majors, that isn't necessarily the case, and you've got to be able to make the adjustment that way as well.
It's funny. We almost had the opposite end of that discussion with Zebby Matthews.
Yeah, right.
The pitcher
You're right.
version.
You're right.
Which is Zebby Matthews' thing is I can throw strikes. I've thrown strikes my whole life.
Yeah.
But his thing is, are they good strikes? Are they what I want as strikes, or are they what the hitter wants as strikes? And that just means, are you working the edges or are you working the middle?
Yeah, that's
and
right.
the middle, even if you're throwing 98 miles an hour, major league hitters will punish fat pitches over the middle, meatballs. And so you flip that around from the pitcher standpoint. And yeah, to point on AAA versus the majors, there are good pitchers at AAA, but there are also a lot of guys who have control problems, a lot of guys who, have velocity but not much else. And so if you get ahead 3-1 on a middle reliever in AAA, they're either going to walk you, which Emmanuel Rodriguez has about 1 trillion walks a year,
Sure.
or they're just going to groove a pitch down the middle and you can destroy it, which he's also very capable of doing. But in the majors, even against the worst members of a pitching staff, you get ahead 3-1 and you might just get a changeup. You might get
on the
a
black.
fastball
Yeah,
on the corner, low and outside. Like they don't give in the same way that AAA, and so that's going to be the adjustment for him. Can he still punish mistakes, but also not only look for mistakes, basically?
Yeah.
And I have some confidence.
We saw it with Edward Julian. Like we've seen it recently as to what that struggle can look like, and ultimately he in his time with the Twins at least he was not able to kind of overcome that. And now we'll see what he does with the Rockies. Similarly, Gabriel Gonzalez, somebody who we already saw that kind of play out with Jose Miranda, right? With somebody who swings at everything, can put everything in play, and at some point you've got to be like, well, I've got to be a little bit more careful. Or just because I can reach something, I don't necessarily need to reach it right now. Or I'm, even though I know it's going to be a strike, I can't really do much with it. I will take the strike in this particular case as opposed to swing and take it. That these are the adjustments that you see between AAA and the majors, and for the last 2 years. When we talk about post-hype prospects, those that have worked out or those that are still trying to work out, what we're saying is we haven't seen the adjustments, the expectations we gathered for them in AAA or even in spring training in some cases, and say, we haven't seen those results in the majors. They haven't made that last set of adjustments in some of those cases. Now, some of those guys like Julian Miranda are gone, but there's a bunch of them here that are still sticking around. And a lot of this season is going to depend on whether or not we see that sort of step forward from guys that we had high expectations for that haven't really developed, like Brooks Lee, who we had high expectations for, or, Trevor Larnach, or Matt Wallner. He's been good, but he hasn't been, and Royce Lewis had his strengths, but also hasn't. So a lot of this season depends on that. I should mention that it just occurred to me as we were talking about Emma Rodriguez and Gabriel Gonzalez compared to you and me with the introvert and extrovert thing. Mm-hmm. There's a good comparison there, but it's also the exact opposite when it comes with, plate discipline, because I will swing at anything. And you are very picky about what you end up taking swings at.
Now, you can see both of us if you're watching on YouTube. Not a lot of plate discipline to be had in terms of food. Let's make that clear.
You are correct. You're right.
What we really need to do is just merge Gonzalez and Rodriguez. You would have a perfect player.
Yeah, exactly right.
You would have a guy who's fast and athletic and can play center, a guy who draws walks but also makes contact. Like you would really have something there.
Extroverted in the clubhouse, but also in his own field sometimes. Yeah, that's right.
I was going to say one other thing about them. I don't know. The other guy that has looked pretty good here early in camp, and again, spring training performance is what it is, but is Alan Rodin.
Yeah, that's true.
And this is noteworthy because he looked pretty bad in the dozen or so games he played with the Twins, and then he tore his ligament in his thumb and was done. He's healthy. He's playing pretty much every game. He hit a grand slam when we were in Northport watching the Braves.
Yeah,
I think he had 3 hits yesterday for him. Look, it is what it is. Batting average in spring training, I'm not going to care about. But he's putting good swings on the ball, which I think just from a confidence standpoint is probably pretty good. I am so curious what they end up doing with him because there are so many ways this could go. Yeah. I guess it's kind of like we were discussing with like Zebby Matthews and Mick Abel. Like he could absolutely make the opening day roster. And maybe I'd put him at about a coin flip to do that at this stage. But
That's a little higher than I would put, but go ahead.
okay. If he makes the opening day roster, is he like the starting left fielder?
Right. I mean,
against right-handed
I think he is. Like that's the weird thing about Roden is that I don't think he's making this team as a bench player.
Right.
He
Except they've
right.
talked about that he can play center,
Well, that's true.
and they've played him a little bit in center. So could he be the backup center fielder and also see some time in the corners? And he does have some experience at first base too, but that doesn't really, even him in left field requires then Larnach going to DH, which
Right.
then requires Josh Bell going from DH to first base, which all of a sudden has made your defense in the infield worse while making your defense in left field better, because Roden is a better defender than the Larnach-Wallner contingent. He's maybe even a passable center fielder for a game a week or a game or two a week as a backup. So then is he competing to be a starting player, in which case that logjam is going to be real heavy, and I don't really know how you can make that work, again, without trading Larnach, which we're still waiting on. Or is he really competing with like the Austin Martins and the James Outmans to be like the backup center fielder and also play some left field? Or I'll give you a third scenario. They just, no matter how good he is in camp, they say, look, we got Josh Bell and Cody Clemens and Wallner and Larnach, and we got all these lefty corner bats, and it's very hard to find that. You hit 300 during camp, you looked good, whatever. We're going to send you to AAA. Go crush AAA pitching for a couple months, wait for a trade, wait for an injury, and then we'll bring you back into the fold, kind of like we're discussing with the starting pitcher. It's not that similar to Abel or Zebby, Alan Roden is too good for AAA. I mean, he's hit 330 there before. Like there's nothing for him to learn at AAA. There's no skill for him to work on other than to continue to get everyday playing time, to maybe play a little bit more center field, to fully test him there, to show that he's healthy, obviously, after last season's injury. But it's really just kind of biding time before you can hand him a job. And I am pretty optimistic about him in general. I mean, we kind of liked him a little, even when they traded for him. It was hard to keep up that line of thought when he hit 120 and then got hurt.
Sure.
So then we stopped talking about him at that point. But I don't think he has star power, really. But I think he can be a solid platoon corner outfielder against righties. I think he can probably hit, 275, 15 homers, draw some walks, steal some bases, a better defender than those guys in left, maybe even capable of filling in center. That's a good, solid player when he's 26 and he's making the minimum salary, especially. But I don't know that I see them having an obvious way to make room for that now.
Yeah. I mean, I don't see room for him right now. Right. I mean, I let me say, I think the way he makes room, I don't see him as a bench player. I don't see him as somebody that they're going to have around as another left-handed hand. They've already got enough left-handed hitting corner types on this roster. They've got 3 of them, and that he would make a 4th of them, right? Because I think you put Cody Clemens in that mix along with Wallner and Larnach.
Well, and I mean Josh Bell too.
Well,
is that type of hitter,
point.
But right. Even less less able to be flexible defensively too.
Correct. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess I can see a situation where they say, you know what, we are going to put Larnach at DH because, I mean, Josh Bell has been playing first base here in spring training. There's no indication that they are not going to play Josh Bell every day at first base. How about let me put it that way, right? We've seen no signs of that, and in fact. I'm sorry,
I won't go that far. Like, I don't think he'll be exclusively a first baseman, but in my mind, it's probably 60-40 first base DH for him. Like, mostly first base.
Yeah, I think it'd be closer to 75-25. But
here's why. The more you see of him at first base, the more you're going to want him at DH. And I'm not trying to crap on him.
Right,
I mean, he's not the worst I've ever seen, but like he just has some limitations there. But the problem is, you only have one DH spot. Wallner, Larnach, and Bell should all be at DH realistically.
Right. That's right.
So that's part of the
issue. The one who doesn't is probably Roden, right? Who would not be running around in the outfield and such. So if any of those guys don't make the roster, if any of those guys go down with an injury, well then Roden's got a spot on this roster. But assuming everybody is healthy, I mean, that requires you put Roden in left field, probably Larnach at the DH, Josh Bell at first base, etc. Then I've got Cody Clemens as a left-hander that I don't even know when he's playing or where he's playing, right?
Right.
So I mean, to some extent, maybe Cody Clemens leaving this team ends up, or
he's not leaving.
Well, yeah, I mean being injured or something, right? Maybe that would open up a roster spot for something like. But even then, I'm not totally sure because he's got the infield piece, right? He can't play second base.
We talk about the logjam of lefty bats, and Lord knows we've talked about it, obviously.
Right.
People are like, well, so what's the difference? Well, it takes spring training starting, and it takes trying to actually map out the roster
Right. Yeah.
to see what the difference is. Because if you remove Larnach from this, like a Jenga thing, everything works much, much better. And, I'm low man on Larnach probably at this point. I'm not saying they have to get rid of him. Here's another scenario. We've wondered, like, what are they waiting for with Larnach? And we've kind of, I think, probably come to the conclusion they're just going to keep him. What if they wanted to see a healthy Rodin in camp?
Maybe.
Running around, hitting well, showing that the hand is fine. And then maybe if they're having this type of discussion already with Rodin and he's looked pretty good and their confidence in him is rising, then maybe it's like, all right, now let's try to move Larnach. Because if you move Larnach, it not only clarifies left field for Rodin, which I think is the best fit, playing every day pretty much, it also opens up a bench spot. And as we've talked about, we got into that heavy on the Patreon side, their bench is going to be tricky to build too. So I think all of it kind of weirdly stems from Larnach or, Larnach Rodin. But yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm saying,
I would say the chances of them trading Larnach over the next 4 weeks are the same as the number of times they've traded a left-handed corner outfielder over the last 7 years when we've been waiting for them to trade a left-handed. Like the one thing they have never been able to really fight. Like every offseason we talk about, they've got one too many left-handed corner outfielders. They'll be able to trade it. And I think whatever offer they are waiting for to be able to make that, it never has come. And I doubt it's going to show up in the next 4 weeks. Like it's
maybe they'll bring in Max Kepler to add another one. He's available.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
Here's the thing I just thought of. What the Twins really need and what Jeremy Zoll, their now general manager, really needs, they need Derek Falvey to get another front office number one job so that they can
gather a left-handed corner outfielders. Yeah,
they can have a place to unload some of these guys.
That's right,
like the moment Falvey gets a job, that phone should ring and be like, can I interest you in a slightly used Trevor Larnach, perhaps? Yeah. That we should also say that it hasn't happened yet, but it sounds like it's going to happen. Keisha's going to start to see some time probably in left field, which is nothing new for him. He's played outfield, but it's new for him since having elbow surgery, what, now 18 months ago or whatever it was, because he couldn't throw from the outfield. So,
but even talking about that, Shelton kind of basically said, we want him to go play left field in case for in-game moves, we want him to play left field or outfield for that. Like we want some flexibility there, but don't expect him to be your everyday starting left fielder. I don't think.
No.
I mean,
first of all,
second baseman.
Who would replace him at second base?
Well, the person who's been playing second base, I think the most time so far here in spring training has been Cody Clemens.
Right. Which, okay, nothing against Cody Clemens,
right.
What does that really accomplish?
Right.
I do think there's a chance that a year from now, let's say, they decide Keisho's just not good enough defensively at second, and he ends up playing quite a bit of left field. I also think, as we talk about all these left-handed corner bats, you need right-handed bats to pair with them.
Right.
One could maybe be Austin Martin, maybe Eric Wagaman. I mean, Keisha could move to left field, let's say, against lefties, except the problem there is Cody Clemens is left-handed. That doesn't really work.
If you really want to dive into sort of a bench discussion on when we were in Northport on Sunday, we ended up having a rain delay, and so we recorded an hour plus about what we had seen in spring training so far. And one of the topics of discussion was sort of a bench. I'll give you my summary on what I think is going to happen. It's going to be one of the backup short. There's basically 10 spots taken. There's 3 spots open, and one of them was going to be backup shortstop. There's 3 guys competing for that. One is probably going to be Austin Martin because he just checks too many boxes in terms of could play enough center field to sort of fill in for Buxton occasionally. He's a right-handed bat, and we wanted to give him some time, and he can steal bases. Like he just feels like somebody that's going to find his way into the roster, and that leaves one spot open for Rodin and Wagaman and Gio Urshela and maybe James Outman, who's out of options. So that is also yet one more thing to take into consideration, whether or not they want to really give up on yet one more left-handed hitting outfielder that happens to be that they just traded for a few months ago that can also back up in center field and is out of options. So for a much deeper discussion on that, again, patreon.com/Gleeman. It's $1 a week. Give it a pull.
Yeah, if you actually weren't bored by that 2-minute discussion of the bench, and you're like, oh, that sounds interesting. Boy, do I have a show for you. Patreon.com/Gleeman.
Yep.
A couple
where we get interrupted by the national anthem and the rain delay.
That's right. And then finally, a Twins person came in and they said, "Are you guys almost done?"
That's right. Yeah.
And I said, "Yeah." And they said, "Oh, because I'm bringing Tom Pohlad in here."
And I said, yeah. And we said,
we
well,
said-
he's welcome to join us.
Yeah.
Have him come sit with us. We'll talk to him.
That one here. I have a prediction. We will get Tom Pohlad on this podcast.
I would bet on that as well. I don't think I'd take the opposite side of that.
Well, let me put it this way.
Let's see how this season goes, actually.
Yeah, I'm not saying imminently or anything. And it might come down to, will you bring the recording equipment to my funeral? And it might just be geek with Tom Pohlad. But we will get him on this show.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, maybe when the Pohlads want to try to lure you out of hiding to finish the job.
Here's what I'll say about Tom Pohlad so far. He had said when he took over that he was planning to spend a month in spring training, almost all spring training in Florida. I was only there for 2 weeks. You're still there. I saw him pretty much every day.
Yes.
And he was in the clubhouse. He was in the dugout. He was walking around. He was on the field for batting practice. He was, schmoozing with people. He was doing interviews.
Yes.
And, I watched live BP before games started, going back to my first few days here. And he would, he was also in the dugout with his kids and stuff, which is, I'm sure, fun for them. And he was talking to everybody, introducing himself to everybody. He went over to Joe Ryan and had a half-hour conversation leaning up against the railing of the dugout and all that. I'm not saying this is good or bad, because it's just neutral at this point. But
he is the hands-on that he has.
He did say, "I am going to be much more present and much more hands-on, and I'm not going to be hard to find, and I'm going to do more interviews." I've joked that he's done more interviews in 2 months than Joe Pohlad did in 2 years, and that is no longer even a joke. That is an accurate statement.
Yes, that's right.
And he did one with us early in camp that we actually broke down on a Patreon episode, kind of quote by quote from that. And my guess is near the end of camp, I wouldn't be surprised if they set him up to do another interview with the scrum that's available there. And so, look, a present, hands-on owner can be good, because it means they're passionate and they're connected and they're able to communicate. It can be bad because they start to meddle in roster decisions and things. I really have no sense of the way Tom Pohlad would go. I personally, if just all things being equal, I like an owner who provides the resources, hires what they think is good people, and stays the hell out of the way. But if you want to be an owner who provides the resources, hires good people, and is still kind of involved in the cooking of the roster, well, that's not the worst scenario either. But I just wanted to note that I feel like one of the things we're going to just sort of track throughout the years, maybe with Tom Pohlad, is words versus actions. And we talked a lot about this. He talked a lot about, we were in the mix for Framber Valdez. Well, fans don't necessarily want to hear that, because who cares? You didn't get him.
Right.
He's talking about he wants to be aggressive and he's willing to add payroll, but, apparently not right now, because their payroll is $100 million and they haven't really done anything. It's not that I don't believe him when he says those things. It's that we've seen too many Pohlads for too many years. I need to see the actions before I assume they will happen. But this is a much smaller scale. His words about, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be hands-on. I'm going to be easy to find. If a player wants to talk to me, they can find me. If a media member wants to talk to me. I had a couple nice little conversations with him. And I think from the Twins' perspective, it's smart, setting aside the, meddling aspect and what that ends up playing out like. Who knows? But if you're a Twins PR person, let's say, you want him giving interviews. I mean, once in a while he's going to make a headline for something he says, whatever. But it's like, one of the problems with Joe Pohlad near the end was every time he opened his mouth, which was increasingly rare, it had become so rare that it was news in and of itself anytime he did an interview, almost no matter what he said. And then that lends itself to, going over every quote with a fine-tooth comb, and you're going to find flaws in it and all that. I'm not saying we won't analyze quotes from Tom Pohlad either, but if you're doing an interview every month and you're, sitting down with newspapers and news stations, maybe even coming on a podcast, it takes the novelty out of it, where then it's just check-ins like it is with, let's say, the front office or something.
And you can also that way you can also track sort of their evolution of their thinking. And we have seen that evolution of his thinking. Like, we have seen it in real time from the day he first started to the first month to here in spring training. His narrative about, hey, we want to be competitive has not changed, right? But his narrative about, we ended up messing up. Like now he eventually got to the point where he was like, yeah, we messed up after 2023 or 2023 by not investing in this team. That was something that was a new realization. And then to the point where he said, had I known what I know now in December, we probably would have been a lot more involved in the free agent market. Well, that's a very different narrative than we started back in December, and certainly a different narrative than we had back in October when we were wondering about whether or not this team was going to even make $100 million payroll or an $80 million payroll or something. And so
now,
and by the way, I wouldn't be shocked if that narrative also tends to change throughout the season as he is confronted with the reality of, what you did not do in the offseason tends to bleed into the season. And,
Sure.
maybe pitchers are hurt and maybe we're not winning as many games and maybe we're not as competitive as we thought we were. Maybe the players aren't developing, or maybe they are, and what you have to do to pivot on that. And I think we will get answers on that because he is so much more available to the media.
Right. Now, people might not like the answers. The answers, like
No,
you
you're
said,
right.
might be inconsistent.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'll slightly adjust the cliche and say narratives are cheap, actions and players are expensive.
Sure. Yeah, that's right.
And that's where I'm at right now with him. But to your point about he does seem able to adjust, whether it's just phrasing or
Right.
he's actually kind of learning lessons. I mean, who knows? Only he would know that deep down. But like, it's as simple as he had a quote, I think it was at Twins Fest maybe, which was like the second or third time we had a scrum with him, where he was like, we talked about it, where he was like, I just wish people would get off the payroll for a minute.
Right.
And I mean, I could have told you in the moment that was going to go over very, very poorly with the fan base or with you and I. And that became a topic for a few days. And I'm sure the Twins didn't love that was a topic. And that was the quote that people were writing and talking about. But then a few weeks later, same guy, same group of reporters, and he stopped mid-answer when he was talking about signing guys or spending, and he said, now I know that the payroll is important to people.
Yeah. Right.
And even that is very subtle, and it might be as simple as a PR person going, here's a way to say that's not going to get people more pissed off at us than we are. But
maybe
that
right.
at least shows there's the ability to learn and adjust and change your communication and all that. And I trust me when I'm not saying even that people should give some great benefit of the doubt.
Sure.
Because as long as the last name is the same, the first name only matters so much with the Pohlads.
Right.
That's the spot. I think they probably even recognize that they're in that spot.
It's been 40 years. We've seen a lot of
Right.
different Pohlads. They've all had the same philosophy. Right.
But I guess what I am so I'm not willing to assume anything he says will come to fruition. However, I'm at least trying to remain in the spot where I'm also not assuming that everything he says will not come to fruition.
Sure. Right.
Like I'm really trying to view it with as much of an open mind or a clean slate as I can, in part because my feeling is I want his words to turn into actions.
Sure.
I want that not only for the team, it's better for us. They'll be more competitive. There'll be more interest. Like I'm not rooting against that. I'm just
Sure.
so skeptical of it that I'm not like rooting for it, cart before the horse sort of thing. But also I do feel like if you can mentally kind of get to a place where you are truly viewing it as a clean slate, just with Tom Pohlad, not the Pohlad as a whole, but just him, I do think it will lend itself to more meaningful analysis a couple years from now, where we do have more evidence of his actions and which words mean something and which don't, and which quotes mean something and which don't. And is he present or is he meddling? Is he hands-on or is he, something? And I feel like coming in there with like starting at zero, you can start to kind of build it from there. Whereas coming in, starting from the point of, oh, I'm certain everything he says is going to end up being BS, that may be true.
Yeah.
But there'll be plenty of time to reach that conclusion on its own. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like,
yeah, right.
So that's where I'm kind of at with him.
Sure.
There was one other thing. I think that's it. So that's our mostly rotation talk.
Yeah.
Little bit of prospect talk.
Yeah.
We will be back, and hopefully you guys enjoyed the section of the Derek Shelton interview. If you want to hear the entire interview, plus get our hundreds of episodes of archives for free,
Right.
which include about 2 episodes a week where John and I were both in Fort Myers recording, a lot of kind of day-to-day notes and quotes and stuff like that.
Immediate reactions to sitting down with Tom Pohlad for 15 to 20
Yes.
minutes, right? Yep.
tons of episodes, and we will continue. We'll have an episode Monday of next week.
Yep.
We'll probably have a Patreon Wednesday of next week. We'll probably do a mailbag with Patreon only questions.
Right. Yeah.
It is a great time to sign up for the Patreon, and we're about a month out from opening day. If you sign up now, you can get that month for 50% off. So it costs you it'll cost you like 30 cents an episode, basically, or something like that. It'll end up being. So that's patreon.com/Gleeman. Sign up, get the whole back catalog, listen to all our upcoming episodes during spring training leading into the season, and also listen to what I really enjoyed as a Derek Shelton episode.
Yeah.
And thank you, as always, to our sponsors, and especially to Black Stack, our presenting sponsor.
That's right. They're now available at a liquor store near you, or stop by their tap room and check out check out your existing favorite brew, or try some of their new stuff, because it's all outstanding. We will be back, like I said, Monday and Wednesday with more Patreon episodes. We'd love to have you join us. You get that half price deal right now, and it takes you all the way through opening day. You'll be able to hear the opening day reactions as well. And otherwise, we'll talk to you next Friday.
Bye-bye.
And welcome to the end of this video. There's lots more. For another, just click on one of these boxes.
Or click on this circle in the middle to subscribe to all of our Twins Talk.
Thank you.
Gleeman